Those Days with the Monsters. Part 52. Kirill trailed after Grumpy in the dark, slanted hallways of the crashed ship. The halls were much wider than the ones on the Carrie Fisher. It reminded him of the size of the Tyzx compared to the Cumans. The halls of the derelict were large too, but he had thought it was because it was a station. Kirill didn't like the large halls much. The Cumans' suits all had lights on their shoulders that had lit the second they went into the ship. The Cumans always seemed to shine the light onto what they were looking at without much issue, highlighting it in a large, bright spot. Kirill's suit apparently had one too, but when he tried to look at something, the spot bobbed and danced, and rarely went even close to where he wanted it. It was annoying to depend on the Cuman crew for his vision. Grumpy didn't say anything as Kirill followed him, so maybe that was what he was supposed to do. Or maybe Grumpy is too busy to say anything to me. Kirill's frills went a bit yellow at the thought. He hoped Grumpy wasn't angry. Right, if we go around this, there's a big broken door. Hook's to one of our team with the cutter. Make it quick. We want whatever's behind it, preferably before the walker hits us. It was hard to make out which Cuman was which with the bright lights bobbing around, but Hook was still pretty obvious. She was a bit shorter than most of the rest of the Cuman crew, and her shoulder light was lower. When she moved forward, Kirill leaned forward to watch the cutter in action. Was it similar to the cutters he'd used as a cargo jockey, with their neat, sharp little blades that vibrated their way through packaging? Hook shone her light on the door and raised the cutter. It had a little bright spot at the tip, and Kirill thought it probably would have made a humming noise if he could hear well through the helmet. Hook tapped the cutter against the door a few times, raised it, and then Grumpy screamed a few of the captain's words. "Hook, stop!" The cutter paused, and the light on Hook's shoulder winked in Kirill's eyes as she turned back around. "HFY? No." Grumpy sounded like he might be breathing a bit hard. "Squishy doesn't have eye protection." Kirill jumped as Hook started whispering words that he wasn't supposed to ask about. Hadn't someone said she didn't say those words now? Clearly they were wrong. "Okay, here's what we'll do. Doc, you take him round the corner. We'll let you know when she's done." One of the Cumans turned and steered Kirill away from the area. He craned his neck, wanting to see what the fuss was about. It couldn't be that serious, right? Once around the corner, he turned to the Cuman, who he assumed from Grumpy's orders was Doc.
"What's going on? Why do I need eye protection?"
Doc sighed deeply. Kirill, look. That stuff isn't safe to look at. And closing your eyes wouldn't save you. Plus your eyes are on the side of your head. I don't know if you could turn around or look the other way." Kirill's frills flared, bumping into his suit.
"What do you mean it isn't safe to—"
A violent burst of blue light flared against the walls for a few seconds, before disappearing. Kirill's frills couldn't fully extend in the suit, but they were definitely red.
"What was that?"
"That," Doc commented, gesturing towards the corner, "is an arc cutter. I guess it's not unique to humans, but you probably didn't get to see it much working cargo. It makes a nasty amount of light. I know your eyes can handle some strong light, but not light like that." After a moment, another bright burst of light flared and Grumpy's voice came over the speaker. "Okay, Doc, come on back. We should be done cutting for a while." Kirill peered around the corner nervously and found the Cumans walking through a large hole in the door, avoiding the glowing orange sides. Doc walked around him and through the door as well, leaving Kirill no choice but to follow if he wanted to see.
"Why did you use something that strong to cut the door?"
he asked, looking at the bright orange light. As he passed under it, he realized that was the wrong question. That orange bit was much thicker than it looked. The door was much thicker than it looked.
"No. Why is the door thick enough that you need something like that?"
The captain had talked about this ship being a merchant ship, like the Carrie Fisher. Didn't merchant ships usually use lightweight doors to hold more cargo? Yeah, about that," Grumpy commented, shining his light around the room. "This ship isn't just a merchant ship. None of them are, at least not anymore. Most of them were pressed into service. It's a merchant ship that does military stuff now." It was annoying how often Kirill's frills ran into his suit every time they tried to flare open.
"But that would mean they don't have much military left."
"Well, we did take out 2/3 of them." That was happy. Kirill hadn't realized he was part of this group. Not much more they can do besides pressing merchants into service. Not just them, either. Humans have a long, nasty history of doing the same thing. Didn't we fight a war about it? Fought a bunch. No point trying to tally all of them. Happy sighed. shining his light up the tilted floor that Kirill realized was actually a wall. They might have cut through the floor to get into this area.
What are we looking for, Grumpy?
Anything interesting? Grumpy crouched down next to a pile of jumbled metal that looked like it might be scrap. This one might be worth it. Looks like jump gate parts. He picked up a piece and turned it over, gloved fingers tracing down a dark-coloured ribbon of something shiny holding the bits of scrap together. Kirill crept over, his feet clanking in the dark room, the metal spot lit by Grumpy's shoulder lamp.
Is that what a jump gate looks like?
It didn't look too impressive. Was this the technology that could throw the known universe into chaos? Nah, this is what jump gate parts look like if you knock them around and throw them against the planet a few times. Grumpy examined some of the damaged metal bits. It doesn't look like anything important got broken, so it's probably never been assembled. Still, good to have.
Yep, caught duty coming through.
Happy added on, and a Kuman that Kirill assumed was Happy scooped up the pieces of metal. Hey, careful with those meatballs, Skull. Grumpy said that, but he didn't sound angry, so maybe Happy hadn't actually upset him. Kirill wasn't sure why humans seemed to call each other names and use angry words without being angry, and he didn't like it. Every time he thought he understood how they communicated, something like this happened, and he was confused again. Yeah. Happy left through the gap in the door, which had cooled to a dull red. Kirill listened for his footsteps, but the helmet muffled most of the sound. The steady rhythmic thump of large feet were not muffled. Kirill spun around, trying to angle his errant lamp where he was trying to look. Y'all heard that, right? Sleepy's voice sounded from the main channel. Unfortunately, something heavy landed on Kirill's shoulder. He was half the length of his body in the air before he realized it had been Doc's hand. It took him longer to land than he'd expected, and he flailed a bit trying to get his legs under him before he hit the ground. Alarmed red mixed with purple on his frills. For once, Kirill was glad the suit was covering his frills, since no one could see his embarrassment.
Sorry I spooked you, Kirill, but Sleepy's gonna want you to be outside the ship, I think.
You read my mind, Doc. As Kirill followed Doc out of the ship, his frills still deep red, he heard those heavy footsteps again, running away from the area and down towards the center of the ship. Cap, are the sub-engines secure? Grumpy's voice sounded tense. Yep. Locked, powered down, and disconnected. They won't be making any unexpected fireworks from these. Good. Grumpy paused for a moment, then his voice sounded again as Kirill stepped out into the light of the planet. Let's get busy, folks. Don't let your guard down. Might be some rats on this ship. Kirill waited outside with Doc, while some weapons, a few piles of metal, and what looked like a modified escape pod were carried out of the Tyzx ship and onto the Fisher.
Phew, you sure you can pull this off, Grumpy?
Shut it, Cap. I'm trying to work. Grumpy actually sounded annoyed this time, and he'd left the main channel open for some reason. Then a loud bang and hissing noise came over the channel. Yep, all hands on deck. Kirill's frills ran into his suit again.
What's that mean, Doc?
It means everybody that can get over there does get over there. Kirill started for the entrance, but Doc's arm blocked him. When he looked up at the helmet, Doc might be shaking his head. It was hard to tell through the glare.
Not you, Kirill. Sleepy'd have my head if I let you go back in there with a rat on board. A rat?
The translator suggested that it meant plague, spies, experiments, and some kind of cooking show. Kirill didn't understand it at all. Don't worry about. Doc trailed off, and Kirill looked towards where he thought Doc was staring. In the hole the humans had cut into the ship, a sleek silver bulk had appeared.
Is that what Doc meant by a rat?
But he soon discarded the thought since this shiny metal thing was being carried by nearly the entire human crew. Grumpy, you son of a... Doc cleared his throat aggressively for a moment. Kirill wondered if he was going to do something like extrude his throat. Could humans do that? He hadn't seen any of them doing it, but maybe it was just considered rude. There was a lot he didn't know anyway.
Is that what I think it is, Captain?
Yep. The captain was also lifting part of the silver thing, and they managed to get it into the Fisher's cargo bay somehow. Crazy son of a... Anyway, Grumpy wanted it. Grumpy, you've lost it. Doc didn't sound irritated or worried, though. If Kirill had to guess, he sounded almost proud. I think we've lost our working time to that, but I guess it was probably worth it.
What was worth it?
Kirill asked as a Cuman that might be Tinker came up beside him.
Crazy bastard decided he wanted one of the sub-engines, so we took it.
Kirill wasn't sure if it was the stuffiness of the suit or the fact that they'd just taken a whole sub-engine from a crashed ship, but he felt a bit dizzy and wanted to sit down. Thank you for listening. Read by A Good Bean.